Let's turn our attention back to Alibaba shares. They're seeing a slight pop here in the session, up about 1.3% on those big numbers coming out of Singles Day over in China. $56 billion, a new record for the company. But that news slightly overshadowed by what we heard from Chinese regulators in their attempt to crack down on some of the big tech names over in China. We've got our very own Andy Serwer standing by with Alibaba President Micheal Evans. Andy.
Thanks a lot, Akiko. Yeah, it is a big day for Alibaba, their annual Singles Day on 11/11, and delighted to bring in Mike Evans, president of Alibaba. Mike, how are you doing over there? I know it's late in the day, but things going well?
Doing very well, Andy. Thank you very much. And just a quick correction for Akiko, it's $74.1 billion US dollars, not 54.
Well, 10 billion here or there, you know.
Actually.
I know it's a lot. It's 20. That's a lot of money. So tell us how that number, this is the gross merchandise value, which is the metric you guys use. What exactly is that number, Mike, and how does it compare with previous years?
Well, that's an 11-day number, okay? And that's different than what we did last year. Last year, the number was 38.7 billion. But this year, we decided to do something different for a couple of reasons. First of all, merchants, particularly in China, needed more time to prepare and to get ready to profile their new products and new innovations. And consumers, we felt, would need more time also to browse and decide what they wanted to select. And a number which we haven't disclosed yet, which I'll tell you, though, is that we have 2.25 billion packages that we need to deliver coming out of this year's shopping festival. And so we were also trying to take the pressure off the logistics system in China, not just our own, but all the couriers and the delivery people, trucks, everything. So there are a number of reasons for changing it, and therefore it's not a completely like-for-like example. But I think the most important message that comes out of it is that we are in a post-pandemic market in China where consumption levels are phenomenally strong, and where almost every category has returned to pre-COVID levels of activity. So this is a demonstrated example of the huge power of the Chinese consumer to buy brands in China and from all over the world.
Wow, it's so amazing to hear that phrase, post-COVID economy. And the number of packages is pretty amazing, too. I guess it's time to release the drones, Michael. I want to ask you about the U.S. and how this figures into what's going on here, because it's historically been the U.S. has accounted for the top 5 in terms of merchants on Singles Day. Where does the U.S. rank this year?
Well, the U.S. this year is the single largest contributor to the shopping festival of all countries outside of China. So the number as of about an hour ago, we're not quite finished tabulating the final number, was north of 5 billion US dollars. So those are products sold by US brands, small businesses, retailers, and even farmers to consumers directly on our platform. So this is an extraordinary result for the US. And I think it reflects 2 things. First of all, most of these brands, and there were thousands of them in the US, understand that a part of the future growth of their companies is going to be the China consumer. And the second thing that they've all experienced is that while last year 135 million or 140 million Chinese people may have left China to travel the world, they're not traveling the world this year. So they're sitting at home and they're buying the products that they would have bought from American companies in China. So this is one of the reasons why we've seen such a big boost in the numbers.
That's fascinating. I remember you talking to me, Mike, last year in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum, and basically telling me that this coronavirus pandemic was coming. How has Alibaba responded, and are they now sort of matching the post-COVID economy as you describe it in China? Are you now moving beyond, and is that the same as it was before?
Well, Andy, it's really interesting. While I didn't really predict the pandemic or even that it would be called COVID-19, I was concerned, and I did express it to a number of people, including you, that this could be much bigger and much more dangerous than people understood it to be. And This is rooted in our DNA because of what happened to Alibaba during SARS. So under the leadership of our chairman and CEO, Daniel Zhang, he did an absolutely brilliant job of marshaling the team and the resources to do three very important things. The first was make sure we look after our employees. So everybody went home. And that was part of the government quarantine. But they went home and were able to work from home because of the way that our business is digitalized. The second thing that we did was we looked after the 11 million small businesses on our platform because none of those small businesses had the capability to look after themselves. So what does that mean? What did we do? We lent them money through Ant Financial. We cut our commissions that we charged them on the platform. We helped them find temporary help. We helped them digitize their offline operations so they didn't have to remain closed month after month, which would surely have bankrupted many of them. And then I think once we felt that they were stabilized, the Jack Ma Foundation, the Josiah and Clara Tsai Foundation, the Alibaba Foundation, we kicked into gear to deliver 200 million units of PPE, ventilators, test kits to 150 countries around the world. Why did we do that? We did that because it was the right thing to do, given the manufacturing capabilities in China. But equally important, we have businesses in many of those countries and employees and offices in many of those countries. So we felt that would be how we could make a contribution at a very difficult time globally. And we, of course, people like me and others worked with Governor Cuomo in the state of New York, which was so badly hit by COVID initially, but also helping other states and other governors deal with their PPE requirements as well. So this was a huge effort and arguably a big distraction from our business, but it was also an investment in the future of what really matters to us and to the brands and merchants on our platform.
Michael, Akiko mentioned the regulatory crackdown that seems to be occurring in China from the government and directed towards technology companies. Can you comment on that?
I don't know whether I'd use the term regulatory crackdown. I think, for example, what Ant has experienced is quite typical of what you would see anywhere in the world, which is an industry, financial services, in a state of high and quickly evolving innovation, where the regulator also needs to evolve and adapt and adjust the regulatory environment. So I don't think this is unique to China. I think you see it everywhere. And I think the key is that we need to be in close collaboration with the regulator, and then we need regulatory transparency before we can move forward, and so that everybody knows what rules we're playing by. On antitrust rules or proposals that have just been put forward, it's very early days. Those proposals are out for comment till the end of November. It's going to take some time before we get clarity on that, and it's probably not the best use of time to speculate on what the outcome is going to be.
As a North American executive in China, which is a rarity, do you sense that the environment has changed and has become more difficult for Western companies to operate there and partner, say, with Alibaba?
No, on the contrary. I think it continues, particularly as we tell the story year after year at 11/11, but we also live the story 364 days in the rest of the year, onboarding brands, onboarding merchants, dealing with all the issues that people worry about in terms of IPR and infringement, making sure that we can provide fast logistics and safe payments, technology solutions to the extent that offices are closed because of a pandemic or any other reason. And I think people are getting more comfortable that, notwithstanding the difficulties with geopolitics, there is a trade channel between the United States and many other countries of the world for brands and SMEs that they can take advantage of, that they can navigate safely, and that they can build a fantastic future for their companies. Not the only channel, but a very, very critical channel. So if you don't have a China strategy as part of your plans for the future, that's probably going to be a problem.
Michael, we should be getting a new administration here in the United States starting January 20th. And I want to know what you think about the rivalry between the United States and China when it comes to technology platforms and technology companies. I mean, we had one internet, one technology world only maybe 5 years ago, and now it seems to be much more bifurcated. Do you see that continuing between the two countries?
It's hard to know what will happen. And I think it's very difficult to make predictions on this. So what we've decided to do, what Alibaba is very focused on, is focus on the core strategy in the US, which is to connect all of those great brands, all those great products to the Chinese consumer. Last year in 2019, this is a number we disclosed, we sold $40 billion worth of American products to Chinese consumers. This year, we will probably disclose again at the end of the year an even bigger number. So the point is that we have to be able to look after our most important customers here in the US, doing the only thing we really do in the US, which is to support connecting them to the Chinese consumer. And irrespective of where the geopolitics go, that's great business for the US and US brands, and it's great business for the Chinese consumers.
Yeah, speaking of the Chinese consumer, Mike, last question here. What is the future looking like for those individuals? What are Chinese consumers going to be looking to purchase and their consumer activity going forward?
Well, first of all, just to comment on the big picture numbers. We now have 800 million of them on our platform. 400 million have now emerged into the middle class. More of them are heading in that direction. You saw the third quarter GDP print in China at 3.9%, or 4.9%, excuse me. And so the economy is doing well. The middle class is growing. And the availability of products from all over the world is still there. So I love to highlight one of the best examples, which is a US small business Fender, which is the guitar manufacturer. That business does phenomenally well in China because in the COVID environment, people have had a lot of time at home. So great opportunity to buy a guitar and learn how to play it. So I think the Chinese consumer, of course, will buy lots of Chinese brands, but they will never stop buying the great American and European and Australian and New Zealand and Korean and Japanese brands because it's super high quality products, reasonably priced and safe. So there's a great future ahead for the US and many other markets.
All right, we'll be looking for the next Jimi Hendrix coming out of that.
Coming to you.
Yeah, right. Alibaba Group President Micheal Evans, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Andy.
Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Andy, and our thanks to Micheal Evans as well.